All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, brothers and sisters, as you know, that the month of Ramadan is approaching closer. And we all know what is obligatory upon us in the month of Ramadan, which is fasting, as-sawm, which is wajib, obligatory upon all of us who are able-bodied and not excused. So fasting the month of Ramadan, it is wajib, and it is obligatory. The scholars that whatever is wajib upon a person, whatever is obligatory upon a person to know, then to perform, then he must have knowledge of it. So whatever a person is obligated to perform from the duties of the Sharia, for example, as-salah or as-zakah or al-hajj or any other act of worship, then it is wajib upon the person. It is obligatory upon the person to have knowledge upon it. It is obligatory upon the person to have the understanding, the fiqh of that particular act of worship. So fasting in Ramadan, it is wajib by consensus of the scholars. There is no difference of opinions among the scholars that fasting in the month of Ramadan is wajib. So the month of Ramadan is approaching soon. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll be discussing the virtues of the month of Ramadan, and then we'll be discussing the ahkam related to fasting, etc. So the month of Ramadan, dear Ikhwan, it is it is the most important month in the Islamic calendar because of its virtues. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, إذا دخل الشهر رمضان فتحت أبواب السماء وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلة الشياطين. When the month of Ramadan approaches, the gates to Jannah are open and the gates to hellfire are closed. And the shayateen, the devils, they are chained up. So this is a great virtue. The gates of hell are closed. Allah's anger is lowered. And the shayateen, which cause the people to do sins, they are also decreased. And in the explanation of this hadith, it does not mean as some people self is chained up. No. The devils are chained up, but the shaitan himself is not chained up. So this hadith, it was narrated by Al-Bukhari in his Sahih and Muslim in his Sahih. So it is a Sahih hadith, and it is one of the greatest virtues of Ramadan. قال الله تعالى شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينة من الهدى والفرقان. The month of Ramadan in which we revealed the Quran, which is a guidance for the people. So another great virtue of the month of Ramadan is that Allah Azza wa Jal revealed his final book upon the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in this month, which is the month of Ramadan. The Quran was revealed on the night of Laylatul Qadr. قال الله تعالى, Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. Indeed, we revealed this holy book, this Quran, on the night of Al-Qadr. So another great virtue of this month is the month of Qadr, the night of Al-Qadr. قال الله تعالى ليلة القدر خير من ألف شهر. The night of Al-Qadr is better than 1,000 months. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. The angels descend on this night, obeying their Lord. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر, and it is all peace and tranquility until dawn. This is another great virtue of this month. Apart from this, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, as was reported in the Sahih from the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, من سام رمضان إيمانا وأحتسبا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنب. Whoever fasts the month of Ramadan with faith and steadfastness, then all his previous sins will be forgiven. And subhanAllah, this is one of the greatest virtues of this month, that Allah will forgive all your sins. And what is meant by forgiveness of all sins. Yani Allah will forgive all the minor sins of the person, excluding the major sins. Yani the major sins are not included in these. The major sins require a separate tawbah. So this is also one of the great virtues of Ramadan. Apart from this, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, الصلوات الخمس والجمعة إلى الجمعة ورمضان كما اجتنب الكبائر. That the five salawat, Friday to Friday in the month of Ramadan to the next month of Ramadan, they expiate every sin between them as long as the person does not fall into any major sin. So these are some of the virtues of the month of Ramadan. And there are many acts of worship which are mashru, legislated in the month of Ramadan, which we all should strive to do. From these acts of worship is increasing in reading the Quran. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah narrated in his Sahih from the hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala an, that Jibreel, the angel Gabriel, he used to come to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the month of Ramadan, teach him the Quran. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite the Quran to Jibreel alayhi salam. So reading the Quran and increasing in reading it is one of the greatest virtues of the month of Ramadan, because the reward of reading the Quran is doubled. And it has been the way of the ulama and the salaf that all of them used to increase in reading the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Hatta it has been reported from some of the salaf that they used to finish the Quran 30 to 40 times each month. Yani in a single day they used to finish the Quran. This has been reported from some of the salaf. Yani the main point is that they used to read the Quran very excessively in the month of Ramadan because of the great virtue which it has. So fasting in the month of Ramadan, as I mentioned before, it is from the pillars of the deen. It is from the umud al-deen. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, as has been reported in the Sahih, Bunyan Islam wal al-khums, that Islam is made upon five pillars. And from them, he mentioned fasting in the month of Ramadan. The fasting in the month of Ramadan is from the pillars of the deen, and it is obligatory to have knowledge of it. So a sawm or fasting, in the linguistic sense, a sawm means to keep yourself away from something. It means al-imsak, to keep yourself away from something. In the Islamic sense, istilah, fasting or a sawm means keeping yourself away from dawn until the sun sets, from food, drink, and every bodily desire. This is the meaning of a siyam. And fasting has levels. As the scholars have mentioned, that fasting has levels. There are some types of fasts which are obligatory, some which are recommended, some which are makruh, yani disliked, and some which are haram, prohibited. From the fast which is wajib, which is obligatory, is fasting in the month of Ramadan. From the fast which is mustahab, yani recommended, is fasting, for example, in the month of Sha'ban. Right now, the month of Sha'ban is going on, and we should all strive to keep the maximum number of fasts in this month too, as it is sunnah to fast the majority of the month of Sha'ban. So this, and for example, fasting the day of Ashura, these are the recommended fasts. After these, there are some fasts which are disliked, for example, fasting the day of Friday specifically. And then there are some fasts which are haram. For example, fasting the day of Eid. So, in summary, fasting, the act of fast, as sawm, it can be haram, it can be obligatory, it can be recommended, and it can be disliked. So, a sawm, fasting, it has some sunan, which every Muslim should know about. From these sunan is, but before that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll be discussing the arkan of a sawm. Yani the things which are necessary for the fasting person to do. The first thing is an-niyya, the intention of the fast. So the intention, the niyyah, is wajib, it is obligatory upon the fasting person to have the niyyah. And this is for the person who is fasting in the month of Ramadan. It is obligatory upon him to have the intention before the night he starts his fast. For example, if you're going to fast, tomorrow is the next day of Ramadan, for example, then you have to make your niyyah the previous night before the next day of Ramadan that I'm going to fast. Yani you make the intention in your heart, not with your tongue. You make the intention within your heart. And this is important. This is obligatory. If you do not do this, then your siyam, your fast will be invalid. So this is important. For obligatory fasting, it is obligatory to make the intention the night before the fast, before the sun rises, before the time of Fajr. If a person forgets it, then even if a person forgets to make the niyyah, then his fast will be invalidated. And from the arkan, the pillars of fasting is to keep yourself away from all food and drink. And this is obligatory upon the fasting person. A fasting person cannot eat or drink or engage in any bodily desire, for example, sexual relations. These are not allowed. And if a person does these intentionally, then his fasting is invalidated. However, the scholars they gave an excuse, and that is for the person who eats or drinks forgetfully. Uh, it is proved in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah from the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, whoever forgetfully eats or drinks while he is fasting, then let him complete his fast because indeed Allah has made him eat and drink. So this is the only valid excuse. So if a person forgetfully eats or drinks or engages in bodily relations during the month of Ramadan while he's fasting during the day of Ramadan, then his fasting will not be invalidated. And this is according to the majority of the scholars. Next, there are some shurut. There are some conditions for the fasting of the person to be valid. The ulama, they state that there are about 8 to 9 conditions for a sawm. The first condition is al-Islam. Yani the person has to be a Muslim. Fasting is not valid from a non-Muslim. The second condition is that the person must have reached the age of puberty. If the person who has not reached the age of puberty, his fasting is invalid. He won't, yani, his ibad is valid, but it won't be counted as an obligatory fast for him. Neither is it obligatory upon him to fast. The third is al-aql. Yani fasting is not valid from an insane person, a majnoon person. The fourth is al-ikama. Yani the person should be not traveling. So for the person who is traveling, yani he's traveling above 80 kilometers or more, then it is allowed for him to break his fast. Yani it is allowed to break the fast for the traveler. But now there is a scholarly difference of opinion as to whether the person who is traveling should he keep his fast. Is it better for him to keep his fast or should he break his fast? On the Sahih saying of the scholars, although the traveler, the musafir, he is allowed to break his fast, he still should not. Rather, he should keep his fast. And this is the saying of the majority of the scholars. Yani, although the person who is traveling, he has an excuse, he should still. And the next shart condition for fasting is al-qudrah. Yani, the person should be able-bodied to fast. Yani, if a person is sick, or for example, a woman is pregnant and she fares upon her child, or a person is too old or has some sickness, all these are valid reasons to not fast. Such a person can break his fast. So these are the main important conditions for fasting. If a person does not fit even one of these conditions, then fasting is not obligatory upon him. Now, fasting, it has some adab, some etiquettes and some manners, and it has some sunnah. From those sunan is as-suhoor. As-suhoor is the food which we eat before the time of Fajr, before dawn. It is the food eaten before the time of Fajr enters. And it is the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said, As-saru fa inna fi suhoor barakah. Do suhoor, because indeed in suhoor is barakah. And Ibn Hibban narrated with the Sahih Sanad that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allah wa malaikatuhu yusalluna ala al-mutasahhirin. That Allah and His angels send their blessings upon those who do suhoor. So suhoor is one of the greatest sunnahs of fasting of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it is a sunnah by consensus of the scholars. So it is highly recommended that a person is going to fast, he should do suhoor because the suhoor gives him energy for the entire day. To fast because he's going to be fasting the entire day. This is why it is sunnah that he eats before so that he may get energy for his acts of worship and his whatever he'll be doing the whole day while he's fasting. Another sunnah for the one who is fasting is to avoid all types of love. All types of love he should avoid, meaning all types of idle talk. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, as is in the hadith of Abi Huraira, من لم يدع قول الزور والعمل به والجهل فليس لله حاجة أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. Whoever does not leave idle talk, then Allah has no need for that person to leave his eating and drinking for Allah Azza wa Jal. The Prophet ﷺ said that the reward of the person who engages in idle talk during fasting will be decreased. So this is from the dangers. A person who is fasting should not engage in any type of idle talk. Rather, he should be engaged while he is fasting in acts of worship. For example, reading the Quran, praying nafal salawat, seeking knowledge, or any other beneficial thing. And he should keep himself away from all types of idle talk which may invite the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal. And similarly, the Prophet ﷺ said that if a person is fasting and he is cursed by someone, then he should say inni sa'in. Yani a person is also ordered to hold of his anger while he is fasting. And even if someone curses him, he is supposed to control himself and not let his nafs take over him. Another issue is, what if a person is fasting and someone invites him for food? This was also mentioned in the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that if one of you is fasting and then he is invited to food, then he should say, Inni sa'in. Indeed, I am fasting. So these are some of the sunan and some of the adab and etiquettes of wudu. Of wudu, of fasting, of siyam. The month of Ramadan, its entering and its leaving is determined by the sighting of the Shawwal. The Prophet ﷺ said, as is in the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, إِذَا رَأَيْتُهُمْ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُهُمْ فَافْطِرُوا. When you see the halal, the crescent moon of Ramadan, then you should fast. And when you see the crescent, then you should break your fast. Yani the crescent moon, whenever it is sighted in any country, it determines the entering and leaving of Ramadan. If the moon, the halal is sighted, then the month of Ramadan starts. And when it disappears, and when it is sighted again, yani at the end of Ramadan, the month of Ramadan ends and the day of Eid starts. Now, another issue is Yawm al-Shak. What if, for example, it is the 29th or 30th of Shaban? It is the 29th of Shaban, for example. And the people are looking at the sky, and the sky is all cloudy, and the people do not see the crescent. What is supposed to be done in this case? According to the majority of the scholars, the people, they should not fast tomorrow. Rather, they should complete the 30 days of Ramadan. Of Shaban. As is in the Sahih Hadith, that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that if the day is cloudy, then you should finish the time period of 30 days of Sha'ban. So if the day is cloudy, then the person is supposed to finish 30 days of Sha'ban and he's not supposed to fast. Rather, he is supposed to fast when he is sure that the halal, the crescent moon, was seen. So next, there are some people for whom it is allowed to break their fast. From them is the marid, yani the person who is ill. And there is an important issue over here, which is that some people, even if they get a slight fever, or for example, they have a sore throat, they break their fast and they say we are excused because we are ill. And this is wrong. This is from the major sins. The only illness in which a person is allowed to break his fast is when the person fears that the illness will become much worse if he fasts. This is what the scholars have said. Only the illness which will get more worse if you do fast, only in this case you are allowed to break your fast, not in any other case. And breaking the fast is allowed for such a marid, for such a patient, and this is by consensus of the scholars. The second person, and I have mentioned this before, for whom it is allowed to break their fast is the musafir, the traveler. And the traveler, it is not like the person who's just traveling 10 or 20 kilometers. The ulama, they make a specific limit for traveling, which is about 80 to 90 kilometers. So if a person he travels more than 80 to 90 km, only then he can break his fast. Small distances, like for example, uh, going to your place of work or something, this is not counted as traveling. Traveling is only when you travel above 80 kilometers and you leave the boundaries of your city. Only in this case will breaking your fast be allowed. And the third type of people for whom it is allowed to break their fast is the kabir, the old person. In the old person who is unable to fast. For such a person, it is also allowed to break the fast, and this is by consensus of the scholars, as Ibn Qudama rahimahullah said. So, if an old person who is unable to fast, he is allowed to break his fast by consensus, and he should do qada. He should expiate for his fast later if he can. If he cannot, then he should give the kafara, which we'll mention later, inshallah. The fourth type of person for whom it is allowed to break the fast is the pregnant woman or the breastfeeding woman. A woman who is pregnant or she is breastfeeding and she fears harm upon herself or her child if she fasts, then such a woman she is allowed to break her fast. And she's supposed to give the kafara for breaking the fast later. And there are some other types of people for whom it is allowed to break the fast. From them is the person who fears extreme hunger and thirst upon himself. Yani to such an extent that the person thinks that it will be uncontrollable and it will harm him. For such a person, it is allowed to break the fast, according to the majority of the scholars. And lastly, the person who is in jihad. It is allowed for a person who is in jihad to break his fast. So there are some issues related to fasting, which I had to mention earlier, which are the first issue, a person who is doing suhoor. A person who is doing suhoor, the sun rises. Yani the time of Fajr enters, supposed to do if he is eating. The majority of the scholars say that if a person is eating, is doing suhoor, and then the sun rises, According to the majority of the scholars, he is supposed to throw away the food. Even if he has the food in his mouth, he's supposed to throw that food away. If he eats that food, his fast will be broken. And this is according to the majority of the scholars. Another issue is if a person is misinformed about the iftar, yani when the time of breaking the fast arrives, or a person thinks that the time of breaking the fast has come, and he breaks his fast, and then later on he finds out that the time had not arrived, does he have to give expiation for this? There is a scholarly difference of opinion on this, but on the Sahih call of the ulama, inshallah, the fast of the person is valid because the person did his ijtihad and he made an error. So, inshallah ta'ala, he'll be excused for his mistake. So, and there are also some things which are mufsidat of sawm. So, we mentioned that from those things which break sawm, fasting is eating and drinking and body relations. And there are also some things exemplary, which also may break the fast. And from them is using eye drops or ear drops or anything which goes down the throat. So any of these drops which a person may use, the basic principle is that they do not break the fast. But if such drops, the eye drops or the ear drops, they go down the halaq, which is the throat of the person, then his fasting is in. Another issue, another mas'ala, for the fast to be broken, the food has to go down the throat. If it does not go down the throat, it's not broken. Many people do not know this. Yani, if a person, for example, he tastes something with his tongue, this does not invalidate his fast. Hatta ulama mentioned that if a person chews gum, yani bubble gum, and it does not go down his throat, then his fasting is not invalidated. Fasting is only invalidated when the food goes down the throat of the person. So these are the mufsidat of a sawm. All right. So if a person intentionally breaks his fast in Ramadan, first of all, this is from the major sins. It is from the greatest of the sins. And Nasa'i narrated with the Sahih Sanad in his book that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that he was shown hell and he saw people who were hanging upside down with their with the muscles of their legs and their mouths were bleeding. And when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, asked the angel, what sin did these people do? The angel replied that these people broke their fast in Ramadan while they did not have any excuse to do so. So, A'udhu Billah, this is the Wa'id. The gravity of the matter is huge. It is from the greatest of sins to break the fast in Ramadan while a person is not ma'zur, while a person is not excused. This is from the major sins. And if a person does it, yani breaks his fast in Ramadan, then upon him is qada. Qada means making up the fast. Yani the person must make up the fast after Ramadan. And if he does not make it up, then he'll have to give sadaqah as kafara. He'll have to give charity as kafara. And this is for the person who broke his fast by eating and drinking. As for the person who broke his fast by sexual relations, then he has to give the proper kafara, which is freeing a slave or fasting 60 days in a row or feeding 60 people, 60 poor people. This is the kafara for breaking the sawm fast by bodily relations. And it is so strict, yani the 60 fasts are supposed to be consecutive. Yani if a person misses a single one of them, for example, a person fasted 59 days and then he took a break for a single day because he got tired or something, then all of his cycle will restart. All his 59 fasts, he'll have to do all of them again. So the this is how strict the kafara for the person who breaks a sawm amadan intentionally is. Of course, nobody wants to do this, so it's better that the person controls his nafs, controls his self in while he's fasting. And there are some other issues. The first issue is, what if a person has has a dream, a wet dream, in which he ejaculates, yani not intentionally? Is his fast invalidated or not? The ulama, they mentioned, the scholars, they mentioned that the fasting of such a person is not invalidated, and this is by consensus of the scholars. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah mentioned the consensus in his book Al-Mughni that the person who sleeps and has a wet dream and uh, has a wet dream and ejaculates, then his fasting is not invalidated. And this is the case for the person who does this unintentionally. As for the person who does this intentionally, and if, for example, a person who stimulates himself, masturbates, or anything like that, and ejaculates, then this invalidates his fast. And this is by consensus of the scholars that the fast of such a person is invalidated. Yani, a person, he's not allowed to do anything by which he may be stimulated sexually. This is not allowed. Similarly, kissing or anything like that is not allowed for the fasting person. A person is not allowed to kiss his wife while fasting if he fears upon himself that he may fall into sexual relations. This is not allowed. So all of these are the mufsidat of a sawm. And there are more mufsidat to a sawm, and from them is vomiting. If a person vomits intentionally, even if it is not very heavy, then his fasting is invalidated. And this is also by consensus. There is no difference of opinion among the scholars on this. If a person vomits intentionally, then his fasting is invalidated. But if the person vomits unintentionally, then on the sixth saying of the scholar, inshallah, the fasting of the person is not invalidated. So if he does it intentionally, and vomiting, then his uh, fast is invalidated. But if he does it, his fasting is not invalidated. And also from the mufsidat, from the invalidators, nullifiers of a sawm fasting is uh, menstruation. If a woman starts to menstruate during the day of Ramadan while she's fasting, then she cannot fast anymore. Her fast is broken. And this is also by consensus of scholars. And there are some other things which also make fasting valid. For example, apostasy. If a person becomes apostate and leaves Islam while he's fasting, then his fast is also invalidated. And this is also by consensus of the scholars. Because fasting is an ibadah, it is an act of worship. And an act of worship is not valid from a person who is no longer Muslim. As you mentioned, that from the conditions of fasting is al-Islam, that the person, it has to be Muslim. So a person who is not Muslim anymore, his fast also becomes invalid. And this is by consensus of the scholars, as An-Nawawi rahimahullah mentioned. And from the things which is sunnah during fasting is miswak. A person can do miswak, and he can brush his teeth anytime while he's fasting. Some of the scholars say that it is not allowed for the fasting person to do miswak, yani to brush his teeth after 4 noon. But on the Sahih saying of the scholars, Allahu Alam, a person is allowed to do miswak anytime uh, during the day because Allah Azza wa Jal states, as in the Hadith of Qudsi in Sahih Bukhari, where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that Allah Azza wa Jal said that the smell which comes from the mouth of a fasting person is more beloved to Allah than the smell of misk. And al misk is a very fragrant, perfume type of smell. So it is more beloved to Allah, the smell from a fasting person's mouth than Allah loves fragrance. So based on this, some scholars said it is not good for a person to do miswak. But on the Sahih, the person can still brush his teeth or do miswak as long as the water does not go down his throat. Or the toothpaste, for example, which he's using, if it does not go down his throat, then he's allowed to do it. And from the sunan of fasting is that the person does not do istinshaq or madmada. Al istinshaq is taking the water into the nose during wudu, and al madmada is rinsing the mouth during wudu. As we know that the general principle is that a person is supposed to do mubaligha. He's supposed to wash his mouth till the end and wash his nose till the end if he does wudu normally. But while a person is fasting, the sunnah is that the person does the istinshaq and madmada, he rinses his mouth and rinses his nose very lightly with water, because it is fair that the water may go down the throat of a person. And the scholars mention that if a person intentionally takes too much water during wudu while he is rinsing his mouth or rinsing his nose, and it goes down his throat, then his fast is invalidated. And this is the saying of the majority of the scholars. So the sunnah for a person who is fasting is that he uh, is gets slide in the matter of istinshaq and madmada. So these are some of the masail which relate to fasting in the month of Ramadan. Also, from the special virtues of the month of Ramadan are praying its nights. The nights of Ramadan, as the scholars have mentioned, they are the best nights of the year, especially the last 10 nights of Ramadan. As we have mentioned previously from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that he said that whoever stands the night of Ramadan with faith and steadfastness, then all his previous sins will be forgiven. Similarly, in a Sahih, in an authentic hadith, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that the person who prays with the Imam, the night of Ramadan, then it will be as he had prayed the whole year. So this is the virtue of standing and praying in the night of Ramadan. And as we approach the month of Ramadan, it is upon us to strive and do the best which we can in this month. We are supposed to increase in our reading of the Quran. We are supposed to stand as nights. We're not supposed to be. You never know when death comes. And if you die tomorrow or in the month of Ramadan, it would be better that you go and meet your Lord with some good deeds. As is in the Sahih Hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, be in this world as if you are a traveler or someone who is just passing by. And the Sahaba, they used to say, if you survive till the day, then do not wish or accept that you will be alive till the night. And if you reach the night, then do not hope that you will be alive till the day. So it is upon us, Ya Ikhwa, that we strive this month, that we strive in this month, and we maximize our ibadat, our acts of worship, and that we worship Allah with all that we can. In a Sahih Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that in the month of Ramadan, Allah frees the people from fire, from the hellfire. In the month of Ramadan, Allah Azza wa Jal frees the people from the fire, from the hellfire. This is a Sahih Hadith. So the virtue of Ramadan is great. And upon us is to strive in it, especially the last 10 nights. because the last 10 nights have the night of Laylatul Qadr, which is thousand than which is better than 1,000 months. We are supposed to strive in this month, pray as much as we can, seek ilm as much as we can, read the Quran as much as we can, make the nights alive of this month as much as we can, inshallah ta'ala, and we make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal that He gives us tawfiq to perform all types of hasanat and all types of ibadat in this blessed month of Ramadan. And then He gives us tawfiq and hidayah, and that we are able to pass this month of Ramadan and see the next Ramadan too, inshallah ta'ala, and that He frees us, and that we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal frees us from the hellfire in this blessed month, inshallah ta'ala. So yes, this was it, and I hope you all benefited from this lecture. If any brothers or sisters have any questions, then they can type that in the chat, inshallah ta'ala.